Experience a legendary collection of American art in All Stars, American Artists from the Phillips Collection, now on view at the Denver Art Museum. See landmark works by Edward Hopper, Georgia O'Keeffe, Jackson Pollock, and many more from one of the most celebrated collections in the United States. All Stars is only at the Denver Art Museum for a limited time. Buy tickets today. Learn more at denverartmuseum.org.
I never did anything to harm my daughter or my granddaughter.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Oh, man.
Casey Anthony's Parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
To get the Crime Writers on Aftershow right now, go to patreon.com/partners in crime media.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, a cult takes over an Oregon town, then resorts to violence to keep their community, which is built on love. We're looking back at the Netflix documentary series, Wild Wild Country. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of the These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
All right, so Kevin, what is coming up on next episode of Crime Writers On?
Well, I'll let you know that this is our final classic rewind for the summer.
Wow.
So we're back on the two brand new episodes a week.
Wow.
And on Monday, we're going to be talking about Telemarketers. It's a new series from HBO Max.
That's right.
And then, or I guess it's just Max. Or
Max.
it could be from HBO. I don't know.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers doesn't talk to me directly.
Confusing.
And then we're talking about the new podcast series from iHeart called The Girlfriends.
Lots of people are talking about that one. I'm looking forward to talking about it too. So again, what are we going to hear in this final CWO Classic Rewind of the summer?
All right, we're going back to March 28th, 2018 for our review of Wild Wild Country.
Can't believe that was 5 years ago. 5 years!
You met your true crime hero.
Sheila.
Yeah.
I mean, she tried to poison some people, but other than that, she's pretty cool.
Yeah, other than that.
Yeah, I
just
mean,
a little thing.
Small infraction.
Tough titties.
Yeah. Well, let's take a listen to that, shall we? Well, moving on, Netflix is out with Wild Wild Country, a documentary about the times, town, and troubles created by a group of Rajneeshi followers who flocked to Oregon in the early 1980s.
I'm here in one of the largest ranches in the Northwest. Today, it's Rajneeshpuram because a prominent Indian guru and his followers bought it.
Our vision was to create a community
Based on compassion and sharing.
Bhagwan's agenda was simply to raise the consciousness of humanity. That was his goal.
America was land of promise. It was my conviction we will have no problems.
I don't think America has a place for these people.
The followers of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh created their own city with airport, founded on peace and free love, but their efforts to protect their community from locals and the government eventually turned violent. Sort of. In talking about Wild Wild Country, we're going to be discussing some spoilers. So if you'd rather hear our review without the discussion, just look at the show notes for the timestamp to which you can skip to get our thumbs up or thumbs down on Wild Wild Country. And if you want to hear us talk about it because you've watched it, here we go. All right.
Sort of?
I just want to couch it a little bit because a big thing has come up. People are watching this documentary, like the Rajneeshis. Are they a violent, scary cult? Or are they a bunch of free-loving, yoga-loving weirdos who like to get naked and just wanted to make a city out of a ranch in Oregon?
And also firebombed city officials, try to poison
after
700 people.
They were attacked.
Yeah.
Kevin, hold on. Laura, thoughts?
Oh, that makes it fine. That
thoughts,
makes it fine.
Laura? Thoughts? I'm not defending it.
You are.
So I'm a little conflicted on this because, I'm watching this and there seems to be, even in the end, like goodness in the people that were involved and wanting to help others and wanting, like the one woman who was, the leader, the general. Now she's
Sheila?
got like her own. she's got her own little commune for old people with dementia. So it's hard to say. I feel like I don't really have the full story, even after 6 hours of this, to really make a determination on that.
Right. So something happens, Kevin, and I know that I'm breaking format, but because usually we start this conversation with like, let's talk about the structure. Let's talk about the characters. I got a note today because, Toby and Laura send their notes and then I use that to sort of, to inform what we're going to be talking about.
Right.
Toby sent me a note today that blew my goddamn mind.
Yeah.
Toby, I think that I know which note it is. Do you want to just go ahead and tell everyone what I'm talking about?
So back in like 1992, maybe, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, went to Mexico, and we ended up staying at a place called the Osho Oasis, which was in Tulum, this little sleepy town with Mayan ruins that are right on the ocean. It's really beautiful. But yeah, so I hadn't really thought about it a whole lot. Like there was a meditation place, and there's definitely like some like
orgies,
like balding guys with ponytails and stuff like that walking around going to meditate. But there's also like just travelers and tourists such as ourselves. While I was watching this, I've read about the stuff that went on in Oregon, but I hadn't realized that he changed his name to Osho. So I was like, oh my God, was this a Rajneeshi place? And what it turns out is that kind of, in that the woman who started it had gone to Pune, the Pune ashram, after Rajneesh had the Bhagwan had gone back, had been sort of forced back to India. And then when he died, she left her husband, she says in her little write-up, and wanted to have a place that kind of recreated the vibe of the ashram. So she like opened this thing, and it was like these little cabanas. I mean, they're not even really cabanas. They're like these huts on the beach with like thatched roofs, hanging beds so that lizards couldn't get in them and stuff. So it was a cool and very beautiful place. And I did not know at the time the little line you could draw to the food poisoners of Oregon.
Right.
Well, there's the thing. Toby, I know that you knew about this story. I feel like an idiot because watching this whole documentary, we see footage from Oprah, we see footage from the World News Tonight, every major news program like really covered this. This quote unquote invasion of this quote unquote cult, which there are reasons why I'm putting them in quotes, we'll talk about. But like this was a huge news story in America that I know I was only a little kid when it happened, but like I've never heard. This is not
it's been forgotten and underreported in the years since. Yeah.
Kevin, what did you think when you started hearing the details of the scope, the scale, the fact that
I knew some of the plot lines. I remember the salad bar poisoning. I didn't remember a lot of the rest of it.
They built an entire city with an airport in under 3 years?
I did not know that. I tell you, there's a lot of like really interesting, compelling stuff in this, and maybe we'll talk about this later, but I think it really just skimmed over a lot of important questions, which left me like, how do they finance all this, and what exactly are their beliefs?
Right.
And really, you're just going to let Sheila say they weren't violent when she, plotted the murder of Bhagwan's doctor, and they had a lab and created biological weapons.
Listen.
Don't roll your eyes, Rebecca.
I'm not saying she wasn't violent. I'm just saying she's also kind of badass. And I found myself, because of the lack of that. All right, let's take I feel like we're just getting into a discussion without any context.
See, well, that's kind of like the series that we just watched, then, isn't it?
So let me take like a big step back, right?
All right.
We are thrown into a story, and dare I say, it is a sex cult. We were thrust into a story. And just given a tremendous amount of information from, by the way, the principal players in the story. You have the main, it's like having David Miscavige talk about the Scientologists. You have Sheila, who was like the first lieutenant of this alleged cult, giving like her first person narrative, and she's not disputing any of the facts of what happened. And then you have the actual townspeople who were like delightful but also kind of xenophobic, like telling their account of what happened. You've
they're the weird
principles.
ones, Rebecca.
No, but you have all the principles, right?
Yeah.
So all the elements are there. You're like, holy shit, we have the U.S. attorney, we have all the Oregon people, we have the state's attorneys, we have like the actual cult people. I still can't figure out, like, what's the harm? Like, what was this cult doing that would made it a cult? Laura, you kind of sound like you agree with me.
Yeah, I mean, that was what I kept waiting, and I'm like, did I miss something? And I'm like, no, I was paying attention. I guess in the beginning, we're watching it and it seems very idyllic. They just wanted to go, they were like happy hippies. They just want to go out and live in the countryside and have sex with everybody and, live in harmony. I'm like, I guess I just didn't really see what the issue was. And it seemed more like the locals were like, something fun is going on out there. Whoa, some weird stuff's happening. Like they're driving through town in their Rolls Royce. And I'm like, so it's weird. It's definitely, there's 50 people living in this town and they're all like farmers and ranchers with their lassos and everything. So I think that this documentary left out some key parts as to why these issues started. And I don't understand why. I mean, you just have to go on Wikipedia and pull it up. And it's like right there at the top that is related to trying to skirt around local zoning ordinances.
Right.
But what do they believe? I didn't really know what they believed. I didn't know. I'm like, okay, so this guy just like came here from India. Like, who is he? Like, why are they following him from?
and are they doing that thing where they're alienating people from their families? Are they doing that thing that cults do where like people are scared to leave? It
didn't seem like anyone was, from what we are presented.
Yes.
All we know is what we were presented, right?
And what's your impression of just, okay, so we got a really interesting question on our Facebook group from Katie, who I happen to know from when I was a kid, who says like, what is the harm, basically, as I'm paraphrasing, what's the harm about like wanting to live in a commune with people who think like you? Where does that turn into a cult? Because I don't think we're shown the stuff that makes this like a quote cult. Because what we know about cults is they isolate you from your family and friends.
Right.
They take everything that you own.
Right.
Like and then you get into a point where
check.
But how are they isolating you from your family and friends? It seems like people could come and go as they please.
They could, but they are encouraged to leave home and come live in Oregon with the Bhagwan.
And only wear red.
And only wear red? Okay, you starting to like see
I still not.
The folly of your logic?
But they've got ashrams all over the world.
Right.
Like that was the big city, but they show that map where there's ashrams. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Thoughts about Rajneeshis. Like when you compare them to cults that we consider like dangerous cults like Jonestown, when you compare them to the Scientologists, when you compare them to cults that we like objectively know. I'm sorry, you don't believe the word objective is being correctly used here, Kevin, but like the cults we know are like legit dangerous, where people are harmed, people die. Not talking about the actual acts that Sheila may or may not have instigated.
Let's just not look at those.
The culty scariness. Don't you feel like this documentary like didn't make a case for that?
No, it definitely did. I think. I mean,
really?
my feeling is there's a few things, but one of them is how weaponized they were. Every like film has got guys with automatic weapons, so that would give me pause. I think it's a little more complicated. I mean, they kind of hint at it a little bit when they talk about like the original ashram in Pune, India.
Which still exists. Which you can still go to for $2,000 a month.
Stay. Yeah.
Laura and I were like TripAdvisoring it today.
I looked it up. Yeah. Crime Writers on.
But it sounds like, and they just kind of hint at this a little bit, but it sounds like it's a place where things were going on, like and more Western things, like some of the therapies that were being come up. Like I think they talk about the human potential movement, but also like Gestalt therapy and things like that. And so it wasn't just that everybody. It wasn't like David Koresh or Jim Jones, where everybody was kind of buying into this one religious line, but that he had sort of created a place where people could come and sort of indulge in these sort of radical ways of thinking about the way you are as a person. It sounded a lot like Esalen, which is a place in California that during like, I guess the late 60s and then into the 70s was sort of where radical therapeutic type things were sort of tried out and talked about, and people lived in this very new agey way, to the point where I did a little research, and the guy who had founded Esalen actually went over to the ashram in Pune to check it out because he thought it'd be a very strong spiritual experience. And he left because he felt like some of the stuff that was going on there was too violent, which I think is what they kind of show in the
In the movie,
The movie.
Right.
Yeah.
My thought was that wasn't so much something that the Bhagwan was promoting, more that he kind of let that happen. And that was sort of, at least some of the therapies were very sort of confrontational, and it was like sort of being very raw and sometimes physical to a degree. And he felt like that, like at least some group of these people had gone too far in that direction.
Kevin?
So, Rebecca, let me ask you a question. Who bombed the Hotel Rajneesh?
Some of the disgruntled Oregon people.
No, it was an Islamic militant group, and people were arrested and went to jail.
Yeah.
But watching this thing, what are you left to believe?
That it's some Oregonians, disgruntled Oregonians.
And then that caused what?
Them to arm themselves.
To militarize, right?
Right.
So I think that is a huge omission.
Yeah.
They certainly weren't arming against a possible retaliation from Muslim extremists.
Right.
They were looking at the U.S. government and the other people in Antelope.
Well,
I think it was a big. That was pretty misleading.
Okay, so before we get to that story point, which I really want to talk about, Kevin, there was more archive footage in this than in like anything else I've ever watched from the period.
There were 300 hours of
Why were
video.
they filming everything they did all the time?
They were home movies.
Yeah.
But
they also had like professional camera people there.
Yeah. Well, that's part of, and Toby, I think, is more of the expert on what this cult was up to. But
they thought they were changing the world and they wanted to document it. I mean, that's how it felt to me.
Yes,
Right.
and every night they would watch videos of the Bhagwan talking about whatever. So, yeah, they were definitely documenting a lot of what was going on. They certainly didn't feel like they were ashamed of anything. It wasn't a close compound because you see the local TV people hanging out there all the time. They had a press person and whatnot. So yeah, they just have this really great treasure trove. It's like almost impossible not to make a documentary when you can see every single historical point playing out in real time.
Right. Now, Laura, every time they said something in this show, they then showed video of it. It's like literally, like every time.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. And this is like a group of like thousands of just regular people, mostly Western people.
We never really got a sense of how big.
Well, we do know that they went to this place in Oregon, the
Big Muddy Ranch.
Big Muddy Ranch that was like 100 square miles, and literally in under 3 years, and we see video of it, like people built hundreds of housing units. They built an airport, like a literal airport that jets could land on, not like a Podunk, New Hampshire airport, but like a literal airport, and that huge hall that held 10,000 people in like a short period of time. It was incredible. Like the footage of them doing it, like they showed them
the farmlands and the land reclamation was amazing.
They land.
And I want to know more about how did you pull that off?
Yeah.
How did you have contractors and
architects?
Well, but the architects were, a lot of the people who were sort of the brains behind it were Rajneeshis.
Right.
It was Rajneeshi architects and it was Rajneeshi lawyers and it was, they had the people within the movement.
I love our listeners. I don't know how many of them right now would be able to step up and say, yes, I can excavate this entire mountain and build you a lake.
Listen, these were, you know how I talk about sometimes, and I have this thing about like disgruntled boomers, or like selfish boomers, narcissistic boomers. These are the people. These are like the boomers. These were all like those people who like the lawyer guy who's like the main like pro Rajneeshi voice in the thing, who's still like super sentimental about it, is exactly what we're talking about. He put all of his lawyerly skills. He had been like a high-powered partner in like a high-powered law firm. He gave it all up and put all of his lawyerly skills to work with beads around his neck toward fighting the man on behalf of this cult, and he was just a lawyer. And but they had like thousands of people. It was really incredible. We have to talk about Sheila because she is sort of the main character of this whole thing. I don't want to ask the question. I'm just going to say it, and then I'll let you guys give your own thoughts. It's very difficult for me, even though the documentary lays out from the very beginning that Sheila is like the Goebbels of this enterprise. Like she's like the lieutenant who does all the bad things, orders all the things. It's very difficult for me to not like her. And it's very difficult for me to not admire her in some way. I find her incredibly compelling, really powerful, really interesting. The most attached in some ways of any of these people talking in the thing, like objectively about what's happening. I kind of love Sheila and I feel bad about it. Laura, your thoughts on Sheila?
I go back and forth on her. She's definitely feisty, but she was also feisty / confrontational whenever something was going on. Instead of, it seemed like, trying to work with the local government and the people in the area where they moved, it's like she was always got her, hackles up, ready to fight them. It made me wonder why she was coming into it from that angle. But, the fact that she went through everything she did and then basically got sold down the river, and she's the one who ended up doing jail time, but she bounced back. She seems to be like, she's like Teflon woman. Like all this stuff happens and it doesn't seem to faze her. It was just fascinating. And, fascinating to see the women that were following her around and that were like, I can't remember what she called them, like her little group of women, some of them who fled with her when she went to the island off the coast of Germany. It was very interesting. I think the thing that turned me about her was in the end when one of the police investigators was talking about interviewing her and how forthcoming she was, but also that she just seemed to lack normal empathy for others and had no sort of regrets or anything about, any harm that had come to people. And that part, it kind of went against everything that the Rajneeshi was supposed to be about in terms of like loving everybody and being all happy and kind of being this utopian society. Seemed kind of odd to me.
Laura, does that jive with the old woman who is helping senior citizens in hospice that we see?
No, and that's the thing. It's like she's really an enigma. And when when you see her, in the end, and you see what she's doing now, and she doesn't want these old people with dementia and schizophrenia to be forgotten or left out or mistreated, and she's got like her own little commune going on. So I don't know if that was the police officer saying that about her lacking empathy was just his way to justify what they were doing, but she's a very, out of all the characters, she's the one I just could not figure out.
What do you think, Toby? What are your thoughts about Sheila?
I kind of agree with Laura that the thing that stuck out to me most about when people talked about her was the thing about lacking empathy. And, when you hear her talk about the days in Oregon, there is no point at which she seems to be able to put herself in the position of the people that oppose her, and doesn't seem to have any consideration for the fact that in this tiny little town of Antelope, suddenly having hundreds and hundreds of hippies like having sex all over the place and dressed up in weird clothes and all this stuff would be disorienting at the least. I think part of the thing with the documentary is that you definitely, like, she's your access point to the community. Like, if you'd had a different access point to the community and it was more about sort of the day-to-day life of like normal people there, I think it would have been a very different program. But for her, it seemed like her one thing was to establish and then defend the community.
Well, one of the things that's most interesting to me about Wild Wild Country is that we're introduced to all these like adorable town folk, right? You have the guy, the rancher, who just so happens to be the son of the guy who invented Nike sneakers, the billionaire.
Right.
You have the adorable ranch-owning couple sitting on the leather couch together. You have that other town's guy.
The goofy mayor?
The guy who looks like Ernie from Sesame Street, but with the overalls on.
Yeah, the mustache.
Yeah, and so you're getting all of these like two ways. You have the former mayor, the woman who was mayor when all this happened, and you're getting all of these conversations with them. And initially in the documentary, you think like they were just living here. It's mostly a retirement community. And then this group of like thousands of people like move in next door, literally next door. And they start doing all this stuff with land that's polluting their ranches and like changing their basic quiet lifestyle. All of a sudden there's cars going through town. There are all these people and they have this sort of like NIMBY reaction. I think the documentary is at its most interesting when the same people that we initially come to sympathize with and empathize with, like what if this happened in our town, get a little bit xenophobic, and we see tons of archived tape that have straight up xenophobic language where people are on the daily news programs going like, these people and their weird beliefs and their weird clothes coming into our town. And then we see in Oregon, they have a plan. Their plan is to bring a lot of people in, register them to vote, to be able to change the opinion and the sort of government where they want to be.
Want to take control of the
government. Which is, by the way, I'm sorry, that's their democratic right. The same way it is when there's a college in a town and all the students come in and they want to vote when they live on campus. And they do voter suppression stuff against the Rajneeshis. And they do all this like weird xenophobic outsider stuff. Like that's the point for me where, you know, despite what happens later with the poisoning and all that stuff, like I kind of come to understand where the rebellion comes into play because they really are.
Whose rebellion?
The Rajneeshi rebellion. Because don't you think that they're weaponizing themselves and all that stuff is about them saying like, screw you guys, we just wanted to come here and do this, and you literally like waged war against us with democracy?
I think Toby just said it. You know, it's like you live to protect the hive.
Right.
But that's so they felt threatened.
But so weren't the townspeople the same exact way?
They felt threatened.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like it would be not weird to have like 1 million people move into your tiny town and take over the cafe and buy all the land and whatever, but like the words they used at the time, not the present day people telling the story now. When you see those same people...
Well, their language is different because they're relaxed because they won.
Yeah,
they
language
don't feel
is
the
also
same
different
sense of
because
anxiety.
of what you can say at the time, and it comes off as really kind of like racist, homophobic, xenophobic, at the same all that same kind of language.
Phobic.
That's how it sounds.
Toby, this reminds me actually of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where it's like one of these allegories for
communism. Everyone's wearing red.
You know, like the fear that our way of life is being taken over by some other.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that's something that Sheila kind of diagnosed and then sort of taunted them with.
In fairness to the people that are coming across as racist, and they are. I mean, they picked a bad place to try to go set up a commune out in like rural, remote Oregon, where, I mean, honestly, you've got a bunch of old retirees who have a very limited window of experience in terms of like what their world has been. So do I think it's right? No, but in fairness to them, I can see how this was overwhelming and scary when you're in this little tiny town and all of a sudden here comes the Rolls Royces and all these people, and it's so far out of the realm from anything that they've ever experienced, because it doesn't seem like there was a lot going on there.
You know, I can understand that too. And one of the things that I found frustrating about this whole thing was that it made me feel some sympathy for people who are basically have bigoted attitudes, which I do not was not a good feeling.
Right.
But I think what is the most objectionable thing about that whole bit is like you can see where the townspeople would get upset about the people coming and then kind of, you know, stacking the town council and doing all this stuff. But what I think the trouble comes is when the state basically picks a side in that dispute, like law be damned.
Yep.
And it's just like, we're going to protect, quote unquote, Oregon.
We're not going to allow any new voters
freaks
to register today.
Right.
That was upsetting.
Yeah. And it's just, regardless of what you think about the Rajneeshis themselves, and I've got kind of mixed feelings, the way that was all handled by the government strikes me as A, bullshit, but B, also sort of a dangerous precedent. You know, it's basically repressing a minority religion that people find weird.
Right. And also a minority people, because one of the things that the Rajneeshis did, and it's tactical, it's not like all about being good people, it was a tactical decision, was they imported homeless people from all over the United States to come live on their commune, and they packaged it as, we're doing this nice thing. But even Sheila says the goal was to get more registered voters in the state so they could help like influence politics in the state of the county. By the way, that is all completely legal. And I can make a very strong argument that it should be legal. Like I said, where you live is where you vote. That is how our democracy works. They made this tactical decision. This is happening in New Hampshire now, or it did a few years ago with the Free Staters, like all the people deciding to move here to try to influence government. And it isn't the state's place to say, like, no, we're just like not doing voter registration today because we don't want your kind on our voter rolls. Kevin, that was weird, right?
Yeah, I didn't think that they should have done that. As far as like we suspect there's going to be voter registration fraud.
Right.
And yeah, I was like, yeah, well, they actually can do that. I mean, they actually can, bring people, and if it's kind of bad form, it is very provocative.
Right.
But
there's nobody asking the homeless people on Skid Row in LA to register for the voter rolls there. They're like
Right. All right. Right. I don't know. I think you're far too sympathetic to this cult.
I'm not sympathetic. I'm
really?
interested.
Yeah,
I'm
it's interesting. It's a very interesting story.
It is.
It really is. But again, I think we said this before, it's a real surface skim of what was going on that left us with a lot of important contextual clues that we just didn't get.
Right.
I really would like to know a little more about the poisoning of people.
Right.
How did that get carried out?
And the drugging of the homeless people who lived on that thing. It was terrible.
Went by like that.
Yes.
I mean, it's not supposed to, the focus is not on the crime. It's sort of on the whole, the whole lifespan of this community. But this is the one that kind of suffers from all the narration being just people's interviews.
Right.
Because you can only put in what people say.
Right.
And if you had, say, for example, a narrator or one of those cards that you just read, they could take a deeper dive in some of these other side things. And if nobody's going to explain how it was financed, then we're never going to know, and we don't.
Right. And many people pointed this out on our Facebook discussion group who sent in comments, was that there's no, in this documentary, some documentaries work this way, but in this documentary, there's no outside voice. There's no reporter. There's no, even the screen text, which they used liberally in that weird font that I could barely read. There's no facts popping up to ground you.
Just locations
and give you that perspective. And that does leave you with where do they get all the money? What do they actually believe in? Were they actually dangerous before their hotel was bombed? What were they planning to do with all those guys? It was confounding, right, Laura?
The opportunity that I think they missed, and I was frustrated because I thought we were finally going to get that context. They have this reporter who, from everything I've seen, did probably the most extensive investigative reporting on this whole situation while it was unfolding. I think he even went to India to find out about. And I'm like, why are you not using this guy to give the background and the context and the information? I mean, there was some, but he's somebody that could have been used as the narrator. He's somebody that could have been used to give more information about kind of the bigger context here. Because I just felt very scattered a lot of the time watching this, wait, what's going on?
Right.
Yeah, because other than the Rajneeshis or the townspeople or the government, a reporter is a guy who necessarily doesn't have any dog in the fight.
Right. I will say the Oregonian very smartly just republished the 20-part series that reporter did. I'm just going to quickly tell you what some of these parts are. Part 1, how the followers of Bhagwan Rajneesh came to Oregon from India. Part 2, how a small-town Indian boy became a religious guru. Part 3,
this is what I want to know.
Before coming to Oregon, the Bhagwan built this thing, yada, yada, yada. The real reasons why the Rajneeshis left India for Oregon. Tales of smuggling, gold money, and drugs.
What?
Part 6, between India and Oregon, the life or death melodrama surrounding Bhagwan's failing health. Sheila using family ties to purchase the Oregon land. There's a lot of information. This is a 20-part investigation. The Oregonian has republished it. And Kevin, I think you should link to this in our show notes today because I have a feeling that every question this documentary left us with is probably answered in this 20-part thing that was done in 1982.
Wow, this discussion was all over the place.
Just like the documentary.
Yeah, just like the documentary, which I was like, I was like at one point, Ken's like, what? Because I'm down. I'm going, wait, what? Oh my God, they're having sex. Wait, what's happening? That some of the naked sex scenes, I was just like, whoa, where did that come from?
This isn't the guy in me talking, but there was not enough of that.
Toby, did you think, like I did and like some of our listeners did, there was too much scoring, too much music in this documentary?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it a ton until my buddy Martin was on Twitter talking about it. And then I couldn't think of anything else. There was, even before he was on, I paused it at one point and, went to get something to eat. And when I came back, I turned it back on. And one of the things that I don't understand why they did this is they would play a song that had singing in it. Mm-hmm. And then somebody would be, talking and there'd be singing in the background.
With lyrics, yeah.
It was bizarre and totally distracting. So when I sat down and started listening to it, I'm like, is somebody playing music somewhere? It just is so weird.
That wasn't mixed well.
The scoring is overwhelming.
So yeah, there's a lot of that, and then there was a lot of sort of signaling how you're supposed to feel about different things. When I think you could probably draw your own conclusions.
Yeah. What do you think about our Australian friend, the documentary, Toby? The woman who is sort of like, she was really, really devoted, and she's one of our she's one of our main narrators, and she's giving us a lot of perspective in terms of how she fell into it and how she fell out of it. Like, what do you think of her?
I think she was good in that she's the only voice you heard very consistently that had been part of the Rajneeshis who wasn't totally devoted to him. I thought she was good. What I wish they'd had is just some sense of what it was like just to be like a person there who wasn't involved in like the high end decision making or anything like that, but just a person who showed up and did the dancing and did the meditating and
the weird sex movies
build and stuff. Yeah, because my guess is that the vast majority of people are there like doing their Rajneeshi thing.
Peace and love.
Without any thought about trying to kill people.
They're not grinding up beavers in a blender and putting them in the town water supply.
Nobody was doing that, Rebecca. That was just a rumor. Let's not spread that.
I'm not 100% sure Sheila's out because she still had a photo of Bhagwan on the wall on her house in her modern day life after serving a jail sentence after all this. Like, it's weird. It's weird, right?
The other thing and this is like a recurring theme with me, is people involved in law enforcement like having weird feelings around people and then like giving that some credence when they think about whether these people are guilty or not. When the Bhagwan was in there, and I can't remember, it was one of the U.S. attorneys said, I talked to the woman who was the sketch artist, and she said the only time, there was a weird, dark feeling. And he said, the only time I ever felt anything like that was around the Ayatollah Khomeini. It's like, wait, what? What are you talking about?
When did you sketch the Ayatollah?
And there was another one, I don't remember the details now, where somebody said something similar about Sheila. And I'm like, your intuition is not a good thing to base law on.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah. Well, what's also not like normal is when I'm dead, covering me with flowers and then filming people, setting me on fire.
Rebecca, there's going to be a podcast about that.
So weird.
I was like shrieking at that point. I couldn't even believe I was seeing that for real.
There's a lot there. There's a lot there to talk about.
Yeah.
So I feel like we have been all over the place. Just like this documentary, Wild Wild Country. Let's just do that thing that we do where we go around the horn and tell our listeners thumbs up or thumbs down. Should they watch Wild Wild Country on Netflix? Laura Bricker? High pressure. I'm going to start with you.
So here's the deal. I'm going to give this a thumbs up. Not because, the story is very disjointed. I feel like a lot is left out, but I'm going to give it thumbs up because of all this archival video that they have makes it worth watching. All of the video that they have access to is just amazing. And it's probably the most bizarre thing I think we've ever watched for this podcast.
It's pretty bizarre. Toby Ball, what about you?
I give it a thumbs up. I think it's probably helpful to have done, like maybe read that Oregonian series before you watch it so you have some context. The footage is incredible. The story just brings up so many different things, as you can tell by our conversation. There's definitely some stuff about the documentary that's not great, and I don't know why they made those mistakes. But I enjoyed it. And obviously, there's a lot to think about with it.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a thumbs up, too. I kept waiting for something else to happen. And the idea of everything that happened with these people coming to Oregon and this huge story that I never heard about before that turned into one of the biggest legal cases in American history, apparently. It was interesting, and it pulled me through. I thought it was overly long. I thought that the whole thing could have been condensed down to a much shorter period of time. I think the scoring was too much, and I think we could have used a reliable narrator. However, it's an interesting story, super interesting protagonist, sort of, that Kevin and I disagree on whether or not she's a protagonist telling the story. So I'm going to give it not a thumbs way up, but a thumbs up. If you like cult stuff, you'll probably like Wild Wild Country on Netflix. Kevin, what about you?
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up. There are some problems with it, that it leaves a lot about the situation and about the Rajneeshis left unanswered. I don't think it was even, it left them unquestioned, actually. I kept, watching, hoping that some of that would get cleared up. Not all of it does, but I couldn't stop watching.
Right.
I had to get through it. I really liked it, and I think most people will like it too. It's a thumbs up, if for nothing else, is to see like all of this video that they found from the 1980s.
Right.
That sort of is what the wallpaper is of the entire documentary.
I want people to understand this ordeal. It's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
Hey, honey, how was your trip to Menards?
Awesome. The Menards bag sale is back.
Oh, what's the bag sale?
You grab a bag in store and save 15% on everything you can fit in the bag. I got a new cordless drill, LED bulbs to help with the electric bill, stocked up on toothpaste, always need batteries, and paint for the mudroom, plus all my favorite snacks. Where are you going?
Menards, we're out of cleaning supplies.
Hurry in! Grab a bag in store now through January 14. Get 15% off everything you can fit in the bag. See store for complete details.
The friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
I stand by it. I still think Sheila's a bit of a feminist hero. I mean, she did try to poison some people. Yes.
Yeah.
There was that mild issue/infraction.
Just, but who hasn't?
Yeah, I mean...
What cult leader has not tried to take out an entire city to further their goals?
Yeah, and then we know behind every great cult leader, there's a smart-ass woman doing all the work.
No, behind every great cult leader is a video team.
That's true. Flynn's Law.
That's right. Capturing all of it.
That's right. Well, as usual, this show was recorded in the Treehouse Yoga Studio above the Mockingbird Cafe in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where I also tell everyone, literally tell everyone, tough titties. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Later.
Partners in Crime Media.
The friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.